I'm Yusef Miller, the Executive Director of Activist San Diego. And again, I apologize for this look. I'm sitting in my car waiting to go into an in-person event, which I'm the beginning person. So that's about to happen really soon. So I would like to start off, as always, with a land acknowledgement. We are standing on indigenous lands of the Kumeyaay and Payaquecham peoples. This is a sacred land and honored land by the traditional tribes that are here, and we should treat the land the same way in respect for our land, air, and waters. And we walk on these traditional lands where they have loved and respected the land and its bounty to us, and we should honor it in the same way. And with that, I would like to welcome everyone to this community event. This is a very important topic. We're talking about public power and the just tragedy that SDG&E is putting our state through and all of our ratepayers. And we, as the people who have the least disposable income to pay these rates, are the ones who are impacted most. And they don't care about that. They care about their shareholders. And we're going to hear about that more in detail with the initiatives that are going on in San Diego County and the actions that we're going on that are happening around. And Activist San Diego is a great partner with a lot of other allies who are addressing this issue. So with that, I'll have to bid my farewells, and I'll turn it over to Francis.
Thank you, Yusef. And that's waving hello to and thanks all for your patience and for being here tonight. We are gonna only have one quick announcement, and then I'm gonna turn the program over to our special guest, Dorrie Bruggemann from Power San Diego. But before we dive into that, I'm gonna invite Kaylee Underhill to unmute, sort of Rights Alliance, and share just a quick introduction on what's happening on a utility tax we need to know about.
Hi, everyone. Just want to make sure, Francis, can folks hear me okay in the room?
Yep.
Great, getting thumbs up. Awesome. So my name is Kaylee Underhill. I am the Advocacy and Development Director with the Solar Rights Alliance. For anyone who's not familiar, we are the grassroots nonprofit of solar users and solar supporters across the state of California. And we believe you have the right to make energy from the sun without unreasonable interference by the utilities, like SDG&E. And Francis has very kindly invited me to speak with you tonight for just a couple of minutes about a looming threat that goes way beyond rooftop solar. Last year, the legislature passed a big budget trailer bill called AB 205 that included a whole bunch of different provisions and a little known provision that added in a new uncapped utility tax, which they call a fixed charge. This utility tax would be based on household income and would apply to everybody who lives in any of the monopoly investor-owned utility territories and community choice aggregators, not municipal nonprofit utility territories. What do you think about? This bill was passed in 3 days with no public hearing and no public discussion. And many legislators didn't even know that this big budget trailer bill contained the utility tax provision. And now SDG&E, along with the other monopoly utilities, are proposing the highest utility tax in the country. It would be $30 to $70 per month just for the pleasure of being hooked up to the grid. You'd have to pay this no matter what you do. And as Yusef was saying, this is one of those examples where these changes that SDG&E is trying to make will impact those who can least bear it. So the utility tax will hurt all people who have a small energy footprint, and it will hit particularly hard for working class and low income folks who live in an apartment or a small home just because they live in a small space. So even a utility tax of $30 a month will increase bills for millions and millions of working class, low income folks who haven't done anything wrong. They just happen to live in a small space like an apartment or a small home and use less than average electricity. Utility tax proponents, so SDG&E, is saying it's going to lower bills for working class people, but they're not telling the whole story. It is the case that there will be a slight and temporary decrease for folks on CARE and FARA. These are the electricity subsidy bill programs that help people pay their electricity bills. but there are millions of people who don't qualify for Karen Farah, who are right above the cutoff. So imagine, if you will, for a moment, a single mom living in an apartment in San Diego, making just $40,000 a year. She's above the cutoff. That's low income by any measure in California. That's a struggling person. That person is going to get hit with the full-on utility tax. Let's remember that this utility tax is uncapped, and AB 205 says nothing about freezing or lowering rates. And because of that, it will undermine all forms of conservation, discourage any form of conservation, from hang drying your laundry to installing new windows to turning off the lights. The legislature created this mess, and they need to fix it. They can do that by repealing the utility tax with a bill in January. They're about to go back into session. So we are asking anyone who is moved by this issue to call them, email them, go to their town halls and open houses and tell them that you want them to repeal this utility tax. Francis, if it's okay with you, I'd like to drop a link in the chat. That's a toolkit that gives all kinds of stuff that people can do. And then if you'd like to get that out to folks here, great. And if not, I'll also put my email in the chat. You can also Google me. I'm Kaylee at Solar Rights Alliance. And again, thank you, Francis, for letting me speak to this issue. I think it's very interrelated to what's happening with SDG&E and to the issues that Activist San Diego prioritizes. Thank you so much for all you do. It's been just lovely to be here with you. And I'm going to stay and listen because I'd love to hear the rest about what you folks are working on.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we have a question for Kaylee.
Is this city or county?
Say that one more time. Sorry, Francis. It was a little...
Tax for the city or for the county?
This is for every single residential ratepayer anywhere in California under any of the investor-owned utilities and every community choice aggregator. So if you get your energy from SDG&E, this applies to you.
All right, well, I'll just introduce myself while Francis is getting the PowerPoint pulled up. My name is Dorrie. I'm the coordinator with Power San Diego, the campaign coordinator. I've been working with this campaign for the past 2.5 months, so it hasn't been a super long time, but I've already met a lot of great people. I'm very happy to be at my second now Activist San Diego event. I was at the gala as well, and also had the opportunity to hang out with my new friend Francis in Maine. We went to a convening with public power advocates all over the country. This is a growing movement. More and more people are starting to realize why public power matters and are trying to get it in their own communities, because the for-profit utilities like SDG&E and others, we really just can't keep letting them get away with making as much money off of an essential service like electricity as they do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a little bit more about SDG&E. I think everybody here probably is pretty on board with not loving SDG&E. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why they are so bad, but we won't spend too much time talking about that, because then what I want to talk about more is the fact that within the city of San Diego, we actually do have an option to fire SDG&E and to replace SDG&E with a utility that is going to be not for profit, that's going to be publicly owned, and is going to have lower rates, better reliability, and work for the community and for the ratepayers, not for the shareholders. Like I said, I've got lots of reinforcements on the call here tonight with Public Power San Diego. I think if we've got questions about the fight for public power in San Diego and in the state in the past few years, those are going to be really good questions for these guys, because they've been around and they've been doing a lot of the building for this movement here in the region. So glad always to have their knowledge. So I have a PowerPoint here tonight. This is a new PowerPoint. The information on it is not new, but I was kind of moving things around and redesigning today. So we're going to see how it goes with the new one. And if it's a little rough around the edges, then, you know, that's just the grassroots touch. So, all right. So we are Power San Diego. We are the grassroots campaign, not just for change, When we put grassroots campaign for change, that was because we didn't have a fully fleshed out initiative yet, but we know exactly what we've got now. We were officially formally published as of last week on what was the date last week? I'm already mixing things up, but we were published midweek last week. We had a press release, and the full language of our initiative is now publicly available. So if anybody wants to really dig into the legalese, that is available for you, and I can get you a link so we can talk more about that. But we are a grassroots campaign for a better utility option for San Diegans, specifically a local, not-for-profit public utility. So let's talk a little bit about why do we want that? Why do we have a campaign for that? So the problem is, of course, SDG&E. Everybody knows this. SDG&E pursues profit at the expense of San Diegans. They are a for-profit utility, so their main objective is to make a profit. Their main objective will always be to make a profit, and it shows. In San Diego, we have the highest rates in the nation, and we have some of the lowest customer satisfaction. So it's funny because from SDG&E's perspective, that's a win in their books. Low customer satisfaction doesn't matter so much when you're doing a great job raking in the highest rates in the nation and delivering a whole lot of value to your shareholders. So what that has resulted in is we now have a lot of San Diegans who are very heavily burdened. Youssef really highlighted this, introducing this meeting tonight. 1 in 4 San Diegans are behind on their bills by $600 or more. So literally a fourth SDG&E customers here in the city cannot pay their bills. And these are just some fun graphics here, kind of showing just the extent to which our rate is so much higher than the national average, so much higher than the rest of California. And look at how much lower their customer satisfaction is. All right, so SDG&E, they pursue profit. They will continue to pursue profit above all else. They have requested to continue increasing their rates even more than they already have been increasing them. They're projected to be increasing by 10% yearly for the next several years. Our graphic here is showing the difference between where we are at in 2023 and where we could be in 2027. We're going to look back on these days as the good old days if we don't get rid of SDG&E. And one thing I don't even have in this slide is that in addition to that, in the past 4 or 5 years, they've been raising their rates 75%. So we already have been seeing huge increases, and we will continue to see large increases. So another thing about SDG&E pursuing profit, they pursue energy from far off sources. Why do they do this? They pursue energy because it's cheap to get energy from a solar farm way out in the desert. It's not cheap to build the infrastructure to then transport that energy from out in the desert to San Diego, but ratepayers pay for that. And in addition to that, SDG&E makes a ton of money off of these long distance transmission lines, okay? The model now for a utility like SDG&E and a for-profit utility, they don't make that really a lot of money off of their generation of their electricity. They make all of their money off of the delivery. So they like long distance transmission because it makes them a lot of money. It also makes people reliable because they have to get that energy from far away in the desert. SDG&E also, as Kaylee has very eloquently, much more eloquently than I could, explained, SDG&E and other for-profit utilities, they attack local solar, they attack rooftop residential solar because it's a threat to their profits. They do not like it. They do not like seeing people not have to pay as much money to SDG&E. And if you go to the next slide here, Francis. Speaking a little bit more on this expense, SDG&E kind of pursuing or persecuting, I should say, local solar. You know, we kind of have their own people concurring that yes, the utilities, they do resist rooftop solar because it threatens their profits. And this is important to point out because SDG&E, they want people to believe that they're pro-solar, okay? They really do. I mean, They get solar all the way out in the desert. They love solar, right? They do not like rooftop local solar. It threatens their business model. And then this is just a little graphic to show what we can expect yearly, depending on different income tiers with these utility taxes that Kaylee was educating us about. SDG&E calls these fixed use rate charges, but a utility tax is a much better name for those. Moving on. All right, and here's just a quote. What SDG&E has been doing, it's morally reprehensible. It's only legal due to a complete failure of our local and state government. And what I think is really powerful here, families are literally putting themselves in debt in order to keep the lights on, while SDG&E makes record profits. So when is enough going to be enough? That's a guy named Alec, who's was involved with the campaign. Yeah, member of the public. So we don't have to just continue to put up with this. We can fire SDG&E. We have that option. We can do it. Give me a click there. But how? How will we do it? Another click. Don't we have an agreement with SDG&E? What are we going to do about that? And what are we going to do without SDG&E? Well, thank you, PowerPoint, for making these questions. First things first, let's address the first one because it's easy. Can we fire SDG&E? Yes, we can. The city charter allows this. We do have a mechanism within the city charter. So this is another reason why why this campaign is focused on the city, why it's focused locally, is because we do have a pretty neat little legal mechanism here that allows us to end the franchise, terminate, acquire the assets by something called condemnation here, and turn this into a public utility. Go ahead and click again. In short, we have the right to terminate the franchise and acquire the assets, the grid within the city of San Diego. This is how we can replace SDG&E with something better. So what is that better thing? As I've already said multiple times, it is not-for-profit, publicly owned power. So what are some differences here? For-profit utilities like SDG&E, they're owned by shareholders. Their primary objective, as I've said many times, and we'll say again many times, is to grow profits and generate higher returns for shareholders. Who do they report to? They report to the State Public Utility Commission. Well, the State Utility Commission approved their request to continue to increase rates even more. Are they doing a lot? No, they're not. In comparison, a not-for-profit is owned by the public. It is publicly owned. Its primary objective is to provide low-cost, reliable energy to customers. And it reports, depending on the structure of this utility, it reports to a local governing body and it reports to ratepayers. So one thing about not-for-profit publicly owned power that we really, really want to be communicating in this campaign is that this is not a new radical idea. This is not some like crazy thing that a small group of radical activists has come up with. This is a proven model. This exists all over the country, okay? In California, there are 44 not-for-profit utilities. All of them are cheaper than SDG&E. And in the USA, across the country in the past 30 years, 26 not-for-profits have been created out of investor-owned utilities. So that is really important because, again, this is not something that hasn't been done before. We've literally been seeing this happening all over the country. And we use this example of the Long Island Power Authority because that is a huge, huge region of customers. It's got twice as many customers as San Diego. So we have seen this work, including in really large communities. And here's some facts to back up how much better it is. So public power in these many communities that it exists in, it's just better. It's got way higher customer satisfaction. I mean, look at that difference between SDG&E, the average, and then LA and Sacramento. Look at the difference between LA and Sacramento with rates in that middle graph. Sacramento has rates that are 65% lower. LA has rates that are 42% lower. That's embarrassing for us. And they're even more reliable. They have shorter outages than the communities that have for-profit power. So if we were to choose not-for-profit public power, we would see lower rates. That's the big thing that matters, right? That's what matters to your average person on the street who can't pay their bills. With a not-for-profit public power utility, we would see lower rates. How would that happen? So first of all, we'd be immediately eliminating the profit margin. We would take ownership of the electrical grid. So we would no longer be paying SDG&E for the right to use our grid, for the right to be connected to our grid, for the rights to distribute the energy into our homes. And then in addition to that, this utility would be prioritizing local energy generation and storage. So that would be, and this is especially when you talk long-term about what the differences are here, being able to focus on local solar is really going to reduce delivery costs from all of these faraway energy sources. For anybody who cares about the environment, that's going to make a really big difference, not building these giant solar farms in ecologically vulnerable areas. But as it says in the slide, these are the ways that it's going to really create some savings for us. So speaking a little bit more on the local generation and storage aspect, because this is a really big part of the vision of this initiative. This public utility would protect rooftop solar and it would promote local power generation. So we'd be eliminating these utility taxes that Kaylee was talking about. We'd be prioritizing the more, building out of local generation and storage moving into the future. And we would be providing stronger incentives for people who do have rooftop solar. Right now, SDG&E, for your net metering, if you're putting power back into the grid, SDG&E pays you wholesale rates. We would be paying commercial, competitive market rates to incentivize that. Next slide, please. And then one fact that we really want everybody to know, the city of San Diego has enough rooftop and parking lot solar capacity to power the entire city. We can do this. We can power our city with locally produced, locally stored, and sustainable energy. But only if we have a not-for-profit public utility that does not see solar as a threat. And here's just a graphic to really drive that point home. This is what we can expect to see with SDG&E, investing in this desert solar, investing in this business model that nets them lots of profit. On the top arrow, and then on the bottom arrow, what we can see is we will see immediate savings, but those savings will increase and increase. That it will go down and down the cost because we're going to be investing in a local sustainable form of energy generation. So again, we can only do this with public ownership. And this little graph that I have here is to show that for a group like San Diego Community Power, because people are like, what about San Diego Community Power? We've already been trying to do this, right? Isn't that what they did? They're nonprofit. Well, San Diego Community Power does not own the grid. They're not a publicly owned utility. So what you actually see with them is they acquire the energy, they do the energy generation. How do they transport it to San Diego homes? Through SDG&E's poles and wires. So they have to pay SDG&E a lot of money, because again, that's where SDG&E makes all of their money. And so what you see here in this graph is that 20%, the yellow section, that's the amount of a San Diego Community Power bill that goes to San Diego Community Power for the energy generation. That 16% and that 64%, that's all SDG&E. And this graph is from a source from a year ago. I will say this is being recorded. So these SDG&E has been up to some funny little shenanigans that we've been investigating with people's bills. And they've actually managed to manipulate things a little bit so that these proportions look different now. So if anybody has San Diego Community Power and you look at your bill and it looks different, we're getting to the bottom of why that is. If anybody in this group actually knows, I've been trying to get a better answer for what exactly happened with that, but it's definitely some shenanigans on the side of the for-profit. All right, so this is just a summary slide. I think we can skip past it. We've gone through this pretty clearly. Okay, so now here's the question that everybody wants to know. How much is it going to cost? This all sounds great. This vision, wonderful. But how are you going to pay for it? So first of all, once we pass this initiative, SDG&E, they are obligated to sell the electrical grid. That is a fact. So of course, you know, they will probably try to negotiate, but they can't get out of that. And we have, there will be an evaluation of what the value of those assets are. Multiple studies have been done to assess this cost. These are feasibility studies to see, is this feasible? And they have found that by utilizing low rate revenue bonds, municipality loans, paying off the loans will be very small compared to the savings. Okay, so one thing we also like to talk about is how is this going to affect labor, right? Because you know, we care a lot about our unionized workers. We want to make sure that that nothing bad is happening to this, and we really want to make sure that unionized workers understand that their contracts, their collective bargaining agreements, they would be honored with the new utility. They would actually directly pass to the new utility. This is actually something that's encoded in law. So that's not even just a promise, that's definitely going to happen. And the new utility would be welcoming of our labored workers. In fact, making this transition, taking the grid from private ownership to public ownership, having that workforce that can also transfer over is going to be a really big part of why getting this going and getting this set up is feasible and is not as complicated as I think some people would like to lead us to believe. And then these facts about solar, just to show that you know, not all solar workers are unionized, but are they going to be doing okay as well when we have a utility that's hyper focused on solar? And the answer is yes, we will be taking care of these solar workers as well. All right, so these are just some of the questions we addressed. How will a not-for-profit be cheaper? How is it different from San Diego Community Power? How's this going to work? We talked about that a little bit. We could talk about that for days if we wanted to. And what about labor? And I have a little graphic here. If you could actually go to the next slide, Francis, I've got it even bigger. This graphic is just to show kind of what this looks like, this separation of the grid. We want it to be really clear here. We are taking the grid from SDG&E ownership. Within the city of San Diego, it is no longer going to belong to SDG&E. So this dotted line that you see in this graphic is the city limit. And when we have something like a distribution substation that has lines that go to the rest of the county, those lines are still going to be there. The rest of the county is still going to be getting their energy, but we're going to be putting a toll booth that's what we're calling it, is a toll booth, that is going to be able to kind of mark that distinction between this is where the public owned grid ends and this is where the SDG&E owned grid begins. All right, so talking a little bit about the campaign. How do we make this happen? Of course, I'm the campaign coordinator. This is what I'd love, you know, to be talking to everybody about is in order to get this initiative onto the ballots in front of voters in 2024, a year from now, we first need to collect signatures. This is a citizens ballot initiative. We are doing this because we, the citizens, are sick of SDG&E and we want to do something about it. We're taking it into our own hands. We have to collect a minimum of 80,000 signatures. And then once we do that, then it will be certified for the ballot. It will become a ballot measure, and then we will vote in November of 2022. So in short, this is a tiny grassroots campaign. We're trying to do something really big here. We know we can do it. We know this movement is growing. We know that people really want a better option from SDG&E. We just need to reach them. So we need as many people as we possibly can, collecting signatures. When we're collecting signatures, we're also educating the community, right? We've got a lot of other opportunities for people to get involved. Our plan for being able to collect enough signatures, and I'll talk more about this because Martin said he was interested in the organizing aspect of this. We want to set up hubs around the city so that we have leaders who are able to disperse petitions, give people brief trainings on how to collect signatures, in different places all over the city. So it's super easy for people to get involved. All you got to do is let us know that you want to be involved. We'll send you to the hub that's closest to you, and then you can be out ideally in your community collecting signatures. We're also trying to ask people, you know, talk to your friends and your family, talk to your neighbors, grab a petition and have a house party if you've got a lot of friends. And of course, we've got other opportunities here. Like if you don't like to talk to people in public, we could certainly use you in the office helping us with all of our data entry. That's always a fun aspect of campaigns. If you want to share your story for us to kind of put in our communications materials about why SDG&E has made your life tough, we'd love to talk to you. And that's about it. If you go to the next slide. This is just a QR code that should take you to the website. You know, it says right there, we do rely on volunteers. We need everybody to make this happen. So that's kind of my stump there for helping me out, helping us out. But I think people are probably going to have some questions. So let's end this here and move to some Q&A.
Okay, so I have a question. So what I'm wondering is, and I keep thinking of, we've done some signature campaigns, and I think about the questions that come in during those campaigns from signers. So should this measure pass, which I hope it does, what would be the pathway for other communities around San Diego, other SDG&E communities, other towns in the county to join us? Or is there a pathway? I should say.
There is a pathway, and I know you've asked this before, Barbara, and I've haven't gotten a clear answer for you yet. There is that right though, that ability, that is a statewide thing. It's not something that is just local. But I do think that moving forward, we're going to want a very clear answer for, you know, oh, so you say that people can opt in. Well, how are we going to do that? So I'll get an answer for you on that one.
Okay. Because there are some communities so close to us, like National City, Chula Vista, Poway, you know, they just identify with San Diego, but they're separate cities.
Yeah, and you're right. And we do talk to those people sometimes. And, you know, obviously a lot of our organizing at this point in time, you know, is centered around where we have people, and we would love to be continuing to expand our reach to more communities. I think really the only limiting factor for that right now is just resources and bandwidth for the 2 full-time coordinators here on the campaign. But I am definitely hearing you on that, because I would agree. I would love to make it very clear to people why this initiative matters for others outside of the city of San Diego. Yeah, it's coming a little second to just getting our signature collection drive underway, but I'd like an answer to that.
Thank you.
Jerry's hand. Jerry?
Yeah, thanks. And Dorrie, thank you for the presentation. It was really good, really comprehensive and packed a punch. I had one question though. You had mentioned the retention, union worker retention, and you mentioned 3 years. And in the published initiative, there was language that I thought said 10 years. But I may be thinking about something else, but it's on, let me see if I can find the section. It's called Retention of Employees, section 74.0108. And it says that to ensure continuity and experienced local workforce for 10 years after the date that Power San Diego begins distributing electricity to customers, Power San Diego and its contractors shall provide to covered employees no less than the wages, hours, and other terms and conditions of employment provided to them on the date this initiative is approved by the voters, including any previous negotiated increases in wages, and shall maintain no less than the total number of covered employees attributed to the provisional electrical distribution service and blah, blah, blah. So it talks about for 10 years. And you had mentioned 3 years. And previously we had discussed 3 years, but I was a little confused with the language in the actual initiative.
Yeah, thank you for flagging that, Jerry. So 3 years is mandated by law. And so the 10 years, Jay, I saw that you raised your hand. Was it because you had a question or because as a co-signer, you wanted to speak on this one?
No, you got it covered. Go for it.
Yeah, so thank you for flagging that, Jerry. I think that that really is actually just an update to the presentation that I need to make. I was in my mind thinking about the legality, the law, but yes, we have discussed before we published this initiative, we have discussed with amongst ourselves and with partners that we want it to be very clear that we are pro-labor workers, that we want labor workers to understand that this utility is not a downgrade, that this utility is going to honor them and welcome them, and we need them, and that's why that language is in there. So thank you very much for flagging that update I need to make to my presentation.
Yeah, just to make it clear that, you know, we're going above and beyond what the state mandates, right? Yeah. And also I noticed Nate Fairman in the Union Tribune article where, you know, Nikolewski was writing about this, said that, I don't know, his language seemed a little more conciliatory than he has in the past. Not like he's on board or anything, but it was more like, yeah, we're not ready for this yet, rather than absolutely not, no way, you know. So I don't know, there may be some wiggle room there. That would be good. Anyways.
That's very good, yes.
Thank you again.
Yes. What you can tell me the question and I'll repeat it over here so that it can be heard.
So I just wanted to, when Nancy and I lived in Sacramento, under the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, they had a time when they wanted to expand. A local community around Sacramento wanted to consider coming in to the municipal utility district. And so what it took was for that community to hold a vote. And if they voted to come into the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, they could. So somebody asked a while ago, how do we take in National City and Chula Vista and those Encinitas and Del Mar and everybody? They just have to vote in their community, as far as I understand.
Okay. So what Derek was explaining was that this happened in Sacramento, that there was a small local community that wanted to opt in to the public utility there. And that in order to do that, they just had to do a vote of the community. So can I ask when this was?
Well, let's see. In the 80s.
Okay, in the 80s. So that is very good to know. Thank you for sharing that fact with us. Again, I would want to fact check to make sure we have our facts straight, but definitely good to have an example of how this has been done successfully in other areas.
And the graph that you showed, the toll house for the city.
We should be able to. Good.
That's focusing San Diego. Is that the focus right now? Just the city of San Diego?
Yes, we're the toll booth.
Right. And so therefore, as was mentioned about voting, the other cities will obviously catch on and try to mimic in order for those cities to have jurisdiction for the same discount or same benefit. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. What we're saying is that this right now is a citywide initiative.
Yes.
But we want to make it very clear that it's not a citywide initiative because it only matters here in the city. This is planting a seed. Right, this is establishing it in one spot. Right. Exactly. And then it can spread. And that's it's an important flag as well, because SDG&E, they are terrified of us succeeding in this because they know that if, you know, as soon as we accomplish this, it's just the proof is in the pudding. Like you see this data from these communities that have public utilities, their rates are so much better. Their customer satisfaction is so much higher and they have better reliability. I mean, what community is going to see that right next door and not say, we want that too? So.
Really quick, thinking first, the city should put first, and then you have a proposition for 24 and they vote. Is there a fund budget source? Because it's really going to come down to TV advertisement for the propaganda of SDG&E.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you asked about that. One thing about, yes, so we are going to see a lot of money coming in from the utilities. They're going to fight it, and okay. they have a lot of money. They have a lot of money to spend. So right now we're hyper focused on collecting signatures But one thing as the, the campaign manager that I really want this campaign to be focused on is educating people, letting them know the facts, making them really understand what is the difference between a for-profit and a public. Again, the for-profit is always going to prioritize profits, and really doing that public education of that. One thing that we saw that we have, gotten feedback from some of our advocates that we met across the country in Maine is that voters also, when they see something like this, they want to know, how is it going to work? We have feasibility studies. This is not a ragtag group of activists. These are people who have been in this area for a long time. These are technical professionals. And this is something that has been thought about. There have been feasibility studies. We know how it's going to work. And now we just really need to make sure that we are doing the work of explaining that to the public so that they have faith, they understand this isn't just a vision that we're painting and then hoping they'll choose it because they hate SDG&E. This is an actual plan that has been thought out. So I think it's really going to come down to doing that education, getting ahead. We know we have the playbook. We have the literal playbook that the for-profit companies, they have a whole playbook on how to fight public power. And we have a bootleg copy of it actually. And we study that. We know their tactics. We know how to get ahead of them. Of course, money, the more money we can get, the better we can do that. So just a little stump for our fundraising there. But yeah, I think it's really going to come down to that. And then another thing I'll say is that one thing that we saw, there was a big vote that happened in Maine. And ultimately, and there was millions of dollars, like a 40-to-1 ratio of dollars spent per citizen in the state of Maine for the ballot initiative there. And that did not ultimately win the state of Maine, but it did win. It did pass in the city of Portland, which is the biggest the biggest city in Maine. So seeing that pass, despite a campaign where I think they were a little less prepared because they didn't have as many other campaigns to look at to know their tips and tricks. And yet through a grassroots effort, they were still able to get that support within the city. I think that has made us feel even more confident that this is possible. We are in a city, we are doing a municipal push, and we certainly don't think it's going to be easy. It's certainly not going to be easy, but we do think it's going to be possible.
So, Dorrie, how do we answer that question about the city? Yes, San Diego Gas Electric is extremely unpopular, but then so is city government. That's history of corruption, bad dealing, can't manage anything. The roads are a mess. It's really hard to say this is going to be a city operation, and we should get behind it. So it's the counter to that.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'll repeat that question for the people on the Zoom. So the question is about the municipal aspect of this initiative. People don't love the city. There is a lot of pushback against the city's management of other things, the roads, and how are we going to address that? That's just a reality of kind of the voter mindset right now. So one thing I'll say, you mentioned the roads.
Well, it's just the roads are one example, but Ash Street is another example. Ticket guarantees, it's just endless example.
Yes.
Pension deal.
Mismanagement.
Yes. So this is going to be a challenge. It will be a challenge. And we have been, we are continuing to workshop what is the best way to, and I'll answer your question because your question was very much around strategy. How are we going to talk to voters about this? So I'm going to talk to you all as supporters, as people who I might be sending out there talking to voters. The strategy for that is, one thing we want to really highlight the fact that municipal utilities, how much better they are. We have a lot of examples of this. The data, you can't argue with the data. They're just a lot better. We are able to influence what is actually happening locally. I understand that, for people who have their doubts about the local government, that they don't want to see, such and such, current mayor today or whoever in charge of something. But the point is kind of that we have a mechanism as voters to actually influence what's happening in this utility We don't have any mechanism at all with a for-profit utility. They answer to the California Public Utilities Commission. First of all, it's super far away. Second of all, are they doing anything to help us? No, they're not. And we can't barely even talk to them. We really have no mechanism for influencing SDG&E. With a municipal utility, despite flaws that do exist with municipal management, we are able as voters to give feedback. We can have an influence. And then in addition to that, one thing I like to highlight about our initiative is that this initiative was written understanding that we are not going to just blindly trust the new leaders of, we're not just going to put a new set of leaders in charge of this utility and trust that it's going to be okay. We're going to have a governance system that is going to be based on, so there's going to be 5 board members. They each have to qualify as an expert in a certain area. So one's an engineer, one's a lawyer. I can look in the language that I have here to tell you all the others. The mayor's job is just to say, do these candidates meet the qualifications or no? 3 candidates for each board seat have to be qualified. And then the way that they're actually selected to the board is by a process called sortition. So they're randomly selected. And this is a model that does exist in other places. There was actually kind of an interesting article that talked about it. It's actually a really effective method for avoiding this problem of patronage that people worry about. Because first of all, somebody doesn't just get to pick who's going on that board themselves. And secondly, people who are selected by sortition, this is kind of a little psychological trick, I guess. They're often much more grateful to be on that board and much more harder working for the purpose of what the board is by being selected by chance versus just being placed on that board. So that's one thing that we've built into the initiative to try to create transparency and accountability. The other thing is that we are going to have a community oversight committee, and that's going to be for every city council district. There will be a person on this community oversight committee. They have to be a resident of that district. And that we've really stretched within the bounds of the city charter, which, we do have to, everything we're doing here, we kind of have to work with what is dictated by the city charter. We have really pushed that as much as we can to give that committee the ability to have oversight. So that would be the other way within the initiative that we're really trying to implement transparency and accountability. But we certainly will be talking more and more about that with our volunteers and finding out how are those conversations going, what are people saying. It's kind of a, it's a messaging area where we're definitely going to be hyper focused on making it as strong as possible as we move forward. Yes, please.
A comment and a question. Comment is San Diego Public Power is San Diego Community Power is public. It's part of the city. It's not profit oriented. And you said it wasn't public. It is. San Diego Community Power is public. Okay. Secondly, did you all consider having an independent municipal utility district that is, I like the governance thing you're talking about, where you have some independent, where you have even choices governed by lottery. That's interesting, and more people are talking about that. We elect our juries by lottery out of the phone book, and those people have life and death decisions to make. And we figure that's okay, to have people just chosen, and then they go down to a jury pool and get further chosen. So there's more thinking about that for all kinds of elections, like Congress and everything, city council and everything. But did you think about the idea of a separate district, like in Sacramento, where the city council and the mayor don't have any say about it?
Yes. Short answer, yes. So first of all, the distinction between not calling San Diego Community Power public is because they are not publicly owned. They are a nonprofit. They are a nonprofit utility, a not-for-profit utility. So they're not in the same category as SDG&E for being for-profit, but they do not, there's no public ownership. They don't, their job is just to contract energy, and then it just goes through SDG&E's grid to get into our homes. So that's why they are not public power. That's kind of the distinction there. But you are correct that they are not profit as well. Unfortunately, that I think, I think citizens wish that was reflected more in their rates. And that's one thing that is also in our initiative, is we are making it very clear we are looking forward to working with San Diego Community Power, and we are looking forward to the fact that they can see some rate relief with our utility, because we will not be charging them those distribution and transmission fees for the grid within the city. To answer your other question, yes, so what you are describing, that would require a city charter amendment. So that is something that was discussed and thought about and was potentially going to be implemented, but a city charter amendment requires many more signatures. It requires 60,000 more signatures. And that's really outside the scope of what's possible for this campaign right now. So ultimately, we chose to go with the municipal model. I don't think that that's something that, people in this initiative are, nobody's pulling out their hair and crying over it, because ultimately what you see with the municipal model, you still see way lower rates, you see higher reliability, you see customer satisfaction. It does make maybe our speaking points a little bit more challenging, but I think when it comes down to the actual management of the utility, we don't see that as being worse. We still see this type of a model as being quite good, and also very easy to transition into, very much easier to set up. So thank you for asking that, though. Yeah.
I don't believe, I just like to finish on that. I don't believe it's true that a public utility district election, if you have a district election for a separate district in San Diego, I do not believe it takes a city charter. Under the Public Utilities Code of California, it says you can form a public district. And if the voters form a public district, then the city is out of it. They don't have to change their charter or anything, because the people voted to have a thing under state law, which is called a municipal utility district. And we have them all over San Diego. We have irrigation districts, hospital districts, and other municipal districts. And the cities around them have no say about those municipal districts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. I don't have, you're kind of getting outside the scope of my knowledge at this point. So I'm going to make a note of that.
Absolutely key point.
Yeah. I don't know if, is Jay still around? Yeah, I'm not very familiar with what you're saying. I mean, I do think that this initiative and kind of the brains who put it together, it did go through quite a lot of thought and quite a lot of analysis with lawyers for what was going to be possible and what was going to be achievable. And ultimately, they came down to this model. Obviously, I understand it's not the most appealing answer to just tell you, this is what the lawyers and the brains behind the initiative came to, and we need to trust that. But I don't have a more technical answer for you at this point in time, but I'll look into that.
Looks like Jay might have something to say. Jay?
Yeah, I think Dorrie covered it. We've had a lot of discussion with Public Power San Diego about this and the SMUD model, so to speak. And I think it did boil down to what we were advised, and I'm telling you, there was some of the best initiative attorneys in the county advising on this. What was possible within the charter. If you go outside of the charter, number one, you have to collect 50% more signatures right off the bat, and that's a real high goal to have to reach in the time frame that we have. And I think that was one consideration. So I think what we've got right now is something, as Dorrie has explained it, that is going to do the job. And that's what we need to concentrate on now and prove that out. And it's going to take a while to really bring this thing into operation. If you take and read the initiative, there are time frames that have been put into it. The other thing I'd like to just reinforce is aspect of accountability and oversight that has been put into this, the community oversight committee that's in there, an audit that is independent auditor of the city will conduct that kind of an audit every 4 years. All of these types of aspects are in there to strengthen really the communication that needs to go to the public. So, and we've also, I think the important point here is that this has the potential to work in concert with San Diego Community Power. If San Diego Community Power wants to invest in local solar within the region and within the city of San Diego especially, there can be a partnership on that type of power generation because it will meet the goals of Power San Diego as well. So I think they're starting to investigate that, but that's going to be a real critical issue for us to see where we can build those kinds of partnerships.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add to this is kind of a bigger point to make among advocates is that this, you know, getting the signatures to put this on the ballot is one thing. Getting it elected is another thing. But regardless of what happens actually at the ballot box to voters, getting a critical number of signatures and showing this community and showing our local government and showing our elected officials, showing SDG&E that there are a lot of people who are starting to realize that there are better options than continuing to rely on this monopoly. People are starting to wise up. They're starting to organize. They want something better. Again, we already kind of, we used the analogy of opening a door. Well, this is another door that's opening. It really opens up the possibility for other avenues, for having more play with more conversations, potentially a mayoral candidate, a city council candidate, people who are going to be champions of public power in a way that we have not yet seen because there has not been, you know, 100,000 people who have said that they want to see that. So that's one thing that I say, you know, for advocates who want to get involved in this campaign. It's not, obviously we want to win. Obviously we want this initiative to win, but whether it wins or not, this is going to be a win for the community. This is going to be a win for public power overall, and it will move us forward in the right direction regardless. So I would really, you know, tell people, you have this doubt about the initiative, you have that doubt about the initiative. I completely understand when you really get into this nitty-gritty policy, people have different opinions on what's best, but this movement and building this and collecting signatures and educating the public, I think we can all agree on that. That's really going to move us forward in the way we need to see if we want to change our situation here in San Diego.
What's the deadline for the signatures?
Thank you. He asked, what's the deadline for the signatures? The deadline, so signature collection officially begins on December 7th. We do have a launch event on December 5th, which is like a pep rally and a training. But signature collection can be no earlier than December 7th, and then it will be going through May 14th.
Thank you.
Dorrie, Michael Brackney. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
In previous iterations of this proposal, there were strong statements of purpose, what this new utility is supposed to accomplish, particularly in terms of encouraging, not only encouraging, but facilitating the installation of rooftop solar and total reliance on the rooftop solar. Was it already covered?
Yes.
So are those strong? Are those stipulations really strong so that anybody elected can't do any less?
Yes, it has been very clearly stated in the initiative language that this utility's mission and purpose is to be promoting and developing local solar, protecting and promoting rooftop solar, and that the long-term vision for this initiative is to have a strong utility that is going to be about local power generation.
And also the use of microgrids too.
I don't think that we are getting into microgrids in the initiative language, but that is something that is very closely related to this, and I think kind of implicated in this vision.
Thank you, and sorry for asking you to say what you'd already said.
That's okay. I'm always happy to repeat a really important talking point.
I'm gonna turn to, we have a guest who's arrived late. Shiv,
Hey,
if you could introduce
thank-
yourself and tell
absolutely.
us if you have a funny story of what brought you here.
Absolutely. So I'm Shruv here from the botched CPUC hearing. There were 2 hearings today, and everybody was super excited. By the way, can all of you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So there was a bot CPUC meeting today, and everybody there, hundreds of people called in thinking it was about the fixed monthly fee that, thanks to AB 205, would be passed. It was not. So it was an absolute colossal waste of time. But someone there, a person there, helpfully mentioned about you guys, and I'm here thanks to them. So I'm super excited to find out about Power San Diego. You'll see me here, hopefully, at all these Zoom meetings. Thank you for setting these up. I really appreciate it. I did have 3 questions, and I wanted to inform, please stop me the moment I say something wrong. I actually expect you to cut me off because I don't want to continue on a wrong train of thought. So I'll just rattle off the 3 questions. The first question is there a forum, like an online written forum, where members can communicate with each other by typing like one does, say, on Reddit or Facebook groups or something similar?
Is that a question for
Yes.
Activist San Diego or for the campaign?
Correct. Well, that is actually a good. I'm not sure. So maybe
both or either.
Fair enough. Let's say both. The reason why I ask is I like these meetings, these Zoom meetings, but I think there's also value in having like a mailing list or like a forum. Is there one?
Yeah, that's a great point. Because you mentioned Reddit, I do just want to plug, for those who are aware of Reddit, we are actually planning an AMA with the San Diego subreddit. Yeah, it turns out the mods of the San Diego subreddit are super pro public power. So we are going to be doing an AMA, which for those of you who don't know, an AMA is an online forum on Reddit where you can announce, hey, we're the Power San Diego campaign, and then all of the users can ask any question that they want, and then you kind of type out your answers to them in real time. And then the best people vote on which questions and answers they like the best, so you can kind of see this ranking of, the most important questions that the community has and our answers to them. So yes, anyway, be on the lookout for that on the San Diego subreddit if you are a Redditor. We are going to have like a communal space for our volunteers. That's something that's in the works. Something like a Slack, just a place where volunteers can be doing whatever they want, communicating with each other, sharing stories, sending memes, whatever. And then one thing, it has been expressed to me before that there is so much information regarding this initiative and so much like kind of policy backgrounds that really helps show how important this is. People are often asking for that information. So one idea that I have that's kind of low effort, because as a campaign coordinator, there's a lot to focus on right now, but was potentially just having like a Google Drive or a Google folder where we have where we're like throw just a lot of like articles and resources for people who want to do some reading. So those are ideas for now, but I will tell you, I'm happy to hear more ideas. If you are also a volunteer who wants to help execute any ideas, that is extremely welcome and encouraged. So I'll make sure that you get my information if you want to share more with me. But
sure,
let me give it
I'll leave a chat so I can connect with you. And I was thinking we could maybe, and I like that this recording is being recorded so I can share it with my co-workers and colleagues who are really upset at how things are going in California right now, especially San Diego. So this is going to be very useful. I was thinking we could maybe use something like Google Groups, which is just like a free website where people with a Google or non-Google address can just sign up, and we can send a message like, hey, we are having a meeting today, or what do you think about this or that? So anyways, we can talk about that offline. My second question, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I just wanted to say really quickly that we do have a mailing list for campaign updates, which is it's not exactly what you're saying, but if you just want to know what's going on with our campaign and you want to hear any updates about this and that, I would strongly recommend you can go onto our website, We Are Power San Diego, and you can sign up for our mailing list if you want to receive those updates.
Fair enough. Very similar idea. I got you. My second of three questions are, if Power San Diego is able to go through the process successfully, will rural areas of San Diego, like Fallbrook or Ramona, etc., enjoy Power SD as well? Or is Power SD going to be, at least at the beginning, focused about the city for now?
Yeah, so Power San Diego is a citywide initiative. So this is just going to be the city of San Diego for now. But one thing that we have discussed a little bit as a group is that there is communities can in the future opt in. So once this is established in the city of San Diego, this is something that surrounding communities could be opting into. It has been asked of me to provide some details about what that process looks like, which is very fair, and I need to do that. I can give you some details in the future of what exactly that method is, but I can tell you that yes, yes, we are only in the city of San Diego, but future communities are going to benefit from this. And also, I haven't mentioned this yet, but future communities also are, or neighboring communities, excuse me, are probably going to see some rate relief coming out of this, because SDG&E is going to realize that people are getting really mad, and they're going to worry that these other communities are going to start seeing this and organizing as well. So there is a very good chance that we're going to see some rate relief for those communities regardless, just because SDG&E is going to back off a little bit so people stop feeling so upset with them.
Fair enough. And my last, I promise, question is, I was just wondering, and I'm curious about everyone's thought on this as well, and we don't have to discuss all of that today in this meeting. Could there be value in figuring out what needs to happen just to set up a distribution network that runs in parallel to what SDG have? And the reason why I'm asking this question is, my understanding of Power SD's approach is that, and I just went to the web for 10 minutes, so I might be absolutely wrong, but I believe the approach is Power SD will outright purchase the SDG distribution network. And my concern with that is distribution network that's poorly maintained, and SDG&E will probably ask you guys to pay 20 grand for a 99 Camry with 3,000 miles on it, with all aftermarket parts and duct tape. So, my question might not make sense, and if not, I apologize. But is there a risk of that happening?
So SDG&E, I mean, they certainly will fight against this, and they will try to negotiate. Ultimately, they don't get to set the rate that this gets sold at. That would be done by an independent auditor or judge. So they can't just set whatever price they want. We have to pay. Yeah. And for your other question, as somebody who is relatively new to this policy space, I don't think I have a good answer for you about that particular model. I think that my best guess would be that just in terms of feasibility and cost, and like, do we have like a good legal mechanism for this? What kinds of obstacles would we encounter? I suspect that the feasibility of that is simply not there.
Fair enough. So will you be purchasing the infrastructure just around the city? So whatever way the cables, the power lines that SDG uses to supply the city of San Diego, that's the sole focus right now. You will be proposing a fair market value to SDG and say, hey, this is a independent.
So I do want to, I do want to answer your question, but also correct it a little bit. We are not proposing this to SDG&E. If we put this on the ballot and we pass it, SDG&E is obligated to sell us their assets.
I got you.
That being said, yes, this is the grid in San Diego City.
I understand. Thank you very much. You have answered all my questions and more. I really appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad. All right.
So real quick, go ahead, Michael, and then I'm gonna we're gonna do a little action. But Michael's got one last question and then
Yeah.
we'll.
If, when a surrounding community, or if a surrounding community were to join the city, how would the structure of the organization change? Would the city be continue to run this operation for all surrounding communities? Or would they be incorporated somehow into the structure, something that would actually end up being something like what Dorrie was asking for, an independent district? How would the governance expand along with the expansion of the territory?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do not have a good answer for that. I think that's kind of a long-term question, and
It is.
and I as the campaign manager am kind of by job description focused on the short term. But I think that is a very interesting question, and I would like to have answers, because at this point we have had several questions about that. And we do want our neighbors in San Diego County to understand that this is something that's going to start working for them too. So anyway, that's just a long way to say I would look into that.
It's going to start working for them, but just another point to show that we've actually thought this out in advance.
Yes.
And we're really prepared to do what needs to be done down the road as well as immediately.
Yes, I think that's a great point. And that question and then the question that Barb has are kind of two parts of the same question. So I look forward to gaining some more knowledge about that specific area from our local experts.
Thank you.
And now we actually have Craig has a comment or a question.
Yeah, I have a question. One is I have to say what I've said in private. I think this proposal and the creation of the proposal unfortunately reflects a process that I think should have been much more inclusive. That many people, many activists on public power were put in the position of being bystanders, and that's unfortunate. And I think the proposal reflects that lack of inclusivity. But let's put that aside. This is the proposal we have at this time. I have a couple of questions. One is, Michael asked a good question about locking in the public power, the rooftop solar and local mandate. My observation is the language is not as strong as I'd hoped it would be. But my question is this. I'm trying to look at this proposal from the point of view of its vulnerabilities, because those are going to be exploited by our opponents. The city collects tens of millions of dollars through franchise fees. How would the city collect those? It's a tax. It's not a franchise fee, it's a tax. How will the city continue to collect those taxes? And I notice there's one provision in the proposal that it's a nonprofit, but it says that any excess monies at the end of the year will be turned over to the city for use in its general fund. So related to the tax issue, how do we prevent this from becoming some kind of cash cow for the city, in which the city facing budget shortfalls begins to raise rates for the sake of covering gaps in other places?
Yeah, so those are a couple of tough questions you have for me, Craig.
Well, they don't have to have the answer today, Dorrie. I recognize that, but I just want to put them on the table because they're serious questions.
Yes. Okay. So the second question was about
excess money going to the general fund. Yeah.
And the first question was about franchise fees,
which amount, I think, 60 million a year or more in franchise fees the city is currently collecting. And I can see people howling and moaning, saying the city's going to lose $60 million right at the front end. Now that, aside from the excess monies that will go I just don't see how we'll be able to respond to that.
Yeah, so there is an option with franchise fees. We have discussed this, that there is something where like a public utility like this could be making a payment, kind of an in-kind payment to the city to be replacing those franchise fees. I do want to point out though that
excuse me, Dorrie, question. But that is not in the language currently, correct? Unless I read past it.
That it is. No,
okay.
I don't believe that it is. I think that's something that we have, like, that has been done, that we have seen that being done, but I would need to cite a source for that for sure. But I'm just kind of telling you that that's something that has been discussed.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'll mention is, also the city is saving a lot of money from this. This is no longer, the city having to be dependent on a for-profit utility that they have to pay money to. So I just, again, kind of want to go big picture with this, that yeah, if somebody is complaining about the franchise fees, I understand, but at the same time, can we look at what the savings are going to be by no longer having to rely on the for-profit model? Moving on to your second question, cash cow. So the mission of this utility and the duty of this utility is very explicitly to provide low-cost, affordable, reliable energy to its ratepayers, to its customers. So for something to be then, turned into a cash cow, that would be directly in contradiction to the mission of this utility and to the purpose of this utility. And to me, that would be grounds for pursuing, accountability within the governing body. And again, that's something that we have the ability to do with a not-for-profit municipal utility. We have a citizens oversight committee, a community oversight committee, excuse me. We have elected officials who we vote in and we vote out. We have none of that with SDG&E. We have none of that with a for-profit utility. So you'll have to forgive me for continuing to go back to the big picture, but ultimately these concerns are valid. I don't think that they are concerns that make this an initiative that's not worth supporting.
Oh, I think you can guarantee on hearing about a loss of revenue from the city from the franchise fees. I guarantee it. It involves too much money, and there will have to be an answer to that question. I'm certain they will pick on that vulnerability, that the city will lose, because that was one of the excuses during the franchise fight for avoiding any suspension of the franchise, that the city would lose franchise fees. So
yeah,
I can guarantee.
I do
just one other question. You don't have to answer. I'm just going to toss it out. I noticed that the oversight committee is temporary. It goes for 10 years, and beyond that.
That is because of the bounds of the city charter. So we are, yes, that is the 10 years is definitely this initiative pushing against the limitations of the city charter and creating an oversight committee that is as expansive as the lawyers feel we are able to claim with it, while still being within the legal green area. And I do just kind of want to orient this conversation. I'm really glad that we have people who care a lot and know a lot, and care a lot about this initiative and it being done right. When you are trying to win a vote, when you are trying to collect signatures, the vast majority of these people that you're talking to, they don't know anything about franchise fees. So yes, I do want to have an answer for franchise fees. I do not want to let any vulnerability slip by without being prepared for it. That being said, what I'm thinking about, the person whose heart I'm trying to win, is a member of the public. All they know is that their SDG&E bill is way too high. They're not even aware that there's a better option. They're not even aware of what a public utility is or what it means. That's the person that I need to convince to give me their signature and to vote yes when it comes. So I am always very happy to discuss all the technicalities. It's great practice for me as well, finding out what questions we need to answer. But I think what people out there on the street want to know is they want to know, what is this? How is it going to work? And how is it going to save me money? So just kind of reorienting the conversation around that.
Thank you.
Jay, stand up on the thing and then.
Okay, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I think these are all considerations, and you know what it really boils down to is what is possible in what we've tried to put forward here in the initiative that we're able to bring forward. First of all, the franchise fee, of course, is ratepayers are paying that, not SDG&E, and that's in their bill now. And then I think this issue about the general fund, or the creating excess. If you look at the language, I think you'll see that in other places there is this issue of the audit, the 4-year audit, and what we're really talking about is that the responsibility for governing this thing and the community oversight committee will be to achieve the goals of this not-for-profit utility. That's what they have to demonstrate, and that's what we'll be evaluating the performance audit every 4 years. And in fact, in the very beginning, I believe there's even a within X number of of days or a year or two of the formation, there's an actual evaluation that is conducted. So I think we've done the best we can in the context of the charter that we're dealing with in the city of San Diego to build in accountability. And if you will look at this thing, we're talking about a community-based and community responsive type of an organization as well. And I think it actually puts more pressure on each of these individual council members they get one person that they can appoint to this community oversight committee. And that person better be doing the job or the buck's going to stop with that council member as well. So that's basically, I think, the approach that under what we've been doing here that we could take.
Thank you, Jay. Taking some notes here. Ricardo, you had a question?
So 360, sending gas electric takes $1 million a day out of the city. That's $365 million a year. So give 70 million of that to the city council to offset the franchise fees. That leaves about 300 million to devote to lowering rates. And then plus the amount of money the city of San Diego is personally going to save on the electric rates might be another 30 million. So plenty of money there to lower rates and offset the franchise fee.
Those are great. Here.
And not only that, like, what do we do with those savings? First of all, that's exactly the point that I wanted to make. Is number one, it's not money that is going to some freaking fat cat, which is the first thing that I want to see. The elimination of my money going to some person who's already stupidly rich. They don't need our money. Fuck them. Number one. That's the way of saying it. And most importantly, though, what do we do with that extra income that the city gets from the ratepayer? Well, we do things like reinvest in infrastructure, making sure that we create jobs to take care of that infrastructure. It's a jobs program, number one. Number two, what are these jobs for? Clear brush. Regreen the areas with actual plants that will not just continue withering away as our planet continues to warm down. Then as these plants wither away, the soil lacks humidity, and the topsoil gets hotter, and the plants on the very top will become brush, and then they will burn. And when they burn, there's no electricity for several days because the transformer burnt up. So these savings go directly into creating jobs, people who will take care of the installations, will take care of the area around it. We don't have to rely on imprisoned laborers that are making $1 a day. Who benefits from that cui bono? That fat cat that I don't want my money going to, because they're not going to pay for that. We all pay for that. And then on top of that, what happens when all these things just catch up on flame? Insurers leave, and the rate that you are paying in your insurance skyrockets. So at the end of the day, this type of measure will save people inordinate amounts of money in lesser insurance rates, obviously in better electric rates, but also in the ability to know that the money that you're paying is actually being used in the benefit of your household and the future of the community. And I told you that I do tertiary thinking into freaking messaging. That's what I think, that this is what we have to talk about to the people that we request a signature for and request their vote for eventually. Yes, for sure, topsoil, top grass people, then grassroots folks that we're talking to. Yes, there's a lot of really important questions. But I really think this is not just a win-win for the public utilities and the ratepayer. It's a win-win-win-win-win, whichever way you want to spin it. And we have to just continue to focusing on this win. At the end of the day, the person, the voter, the community member, focuses on number one, the pocketbook. we have to talk about it from those sides.
And did we mention that the public power company will put solar on the homes of low-income people who can't afford solar today? And the public power company, like the Los Angeles Public Power Company does, goes out and puts solar on low-income homes and then lets the low-income homes share the profit that, by their power rates being reduced further because they have solar. And the public power company is not afraid of having more and more rooftop solar. So there's a deal that he made there where the public power company gets some of the savings that home experiences to pay for the solar installation that the public power company put on the home. And then the homeowner, the people that live in the home, they get some savings from having solar on their roof and no longer having to have electric bills.
Absolutely.
Right on, right
These are
on.
Great points. I hope you guys are gonna be out there in the field with me making these points.
So I have one
So-
question,
yeah.
just to kind of go off of Ricardo's. SDG&E has their parent company, Sempra, and Sempra is a huge donor to San Diegan nonprofits. And I want to say that's what they do, not with all of the profits, but to make them not look bad, I guess, they'll give out to the San Diego Foundation, let's say, and then San Diego Foundation distributes those funds to nonprofits. Would Power San Diego have something similar, like giving back to the community, like with those extra profits that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm glad you mentioned how much Sempra and SDG&E give money. Of course, there is a lot of strategy behind that as opposed to just goodwill from their hearts and souls.
It's dinky compared to what they're taking out.
Yes. Dinky compared to what they're taking out of the community.
And it's our money.
Yeah. So I think what you're asking, to me, it's kind of related to what Ricardo here was saying, is that and this is also a good moment for me to say that I've read some materials. I have one handbook that I'm happy to share that's just kind of a guide on what public utilities are. And it's not a bug, it's a feature that there is money that these utilities make that can then be put towards bettering other things. That if even with these lower rates, if there is excess money, that can go back to the city and can fund important programs that are happening in the city. I can see why for someone distrustful of the city, they would see that in our initiative language and they would say that's a red flag, but I don't think that that's something that's kind of like sketchy or weird. I think that that's, again, not a bug, but a feature of what public utilities can do. And so I think in regards to your question about giving back to the community and in regards to your statement, I think that these are kind of all parts of the same question of what is a public utility going to do for our community? It's going to do a hell of a lot more than what a for-profit utility is going to do, which is just extract as much as they can.
And just to round that all up, right? My statement was just quote unquote, fuck them. I just want to let that super clean.
I'm going to put that on the quote slide at my presentation. I'm going to put that quote next time.
I say, my saying in the Navy was, excuse my French, I'm next.
All right, Jay, was your hand still up from earlier? I'm sorry, I muted you because of sound, but you can unmute if you still have something else to say.
Sorry about that. Trying to
no.
not disturb things. I wanted to follow up. I don't know if it was Derek that was, in some really good discussion of, the issue of this fund or what funds will be available. And Craig had brought up what's the city gonna say? One of the things I think we got to keep in mind is the city is a ratepayer and they're paying, I don't know what that number is, but it's huge. And, they are going to not be paying as much to operate this city, which is our taxes paid for our city's rates, electric rates. So I think that is another area, an opportunity for us to do a little bit more crunching on some of these issues. These are really good issues to kind of put in context and in perspective and comparative to what the benefits are going to be to the city versus, you know, if you're not paying SDG&E and their exorbitant rates and profits right off the bat to keep the street lights on and operate the rest of the city and all the facilities, what is that quantum and how is that going to look against, for instance, this franchise fee benefit, which we're already paying for? We won't be paying a franchise fee to this new utility, but the city won't be paying SDG&E and Sempra that profit margin rated electricity either. So those are just some of the points I think that we can hammer on and work on. And I want to my friends and colleagues here that are attending and I've worked with in Public Power San Diego, and the knowledge that we have collectively, this is what we need to everybody to help on just hammering on some of this stuff, so it makes us stronger and more prepared to be successful. I'm not real big on talking about how this is going to be wonderful in spite of if we don't make it. I think we can make it, and we should do what we can do to make it happen. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Speaking of what we can do to make it happen, well, first, can I get, if you personally are supporting this ballot measure, can you raise your hand if you dig it, if you're on board, if you guys are on board? Okay, we got some hands here. We got some in the chat. Okay. Now what about who here thinks that they know someone else, know other people who would be into this, who would want to hear about this?
Yeah, small businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, got more hands here.
I got two hands up.
Okay, so and I'll say that, you know, I've spoken to quite a few people about this issue and realized people have all sorts of, you know, a big thing is the cost, but that cost also becomes like a healthcare issue. It's like people who have issues, they need to stay warm, but they can't afford to stay warm. People who are on machines for their health that they need to plug in. All of these, there's so many different reasons that people care about this issue. So a big thing to get this on the ballot, Dorrie mentioned we need 80,000 valid signatures, which means we need to collect probably about 120,000 to make sure that you know, any ones that get tossed out, that we have plenty to spare, and we can make sure there's no shenanigans to get it to block us. On the screen, you guys see there's a QR code. And if folks, so this QR code is actually going to lead you to a little program that we have called the Empower Project, and it's a relational organizing tool that makes it really easy for you to talk to your friends and family and your contacts about this issue. And so I want to encourage everyone to scan that QR code in your phone. It should pull up a link to something called the Empower Project. It will ask you to create a little account in Empower Project. Sorry, it'll actually ask you to download an app. It's a very cool, very simple app that once you learn, you can use for any of your organizing, for any campaigns that you have, you can connect with. It's free for nonprofits, C3s and C4s. And it's a very powerful tool. Activist San Diego, right now, our board members are almost all entirely, I think everyone, the board is going to officially vote to endorse and support this measure.
Yeah.
And we will, yeah, we shall overcome. Thank you all for coming. We'll end there.
Great.
And Dorrie's putting the link in the chat right now for the website again.
What is the website? Would you just speak it out?
We are powersandiego.com.
We are Power San Diego.
WEAREPOWER San Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can give you a flyer which has a QR code, so you can, and also says the URL, so that
Sure.
you don't forget.
So thank you all.